September arrives in exactly 1 week, and 7 perennials in your yard are on a countdown you can't see yet. This isn't about neatening up your beds for curb appeal before fall company arrives at your door. It's about one precise cut, at one precise depth, on one precise plant, before one precise date. Miss that window, and you aren't just losing this year's leaves, you're handing next spring to a pest. A pathogen finishing its life cycle in your garden this exact week is the real threat here. I've managed perennial beds professionally for more than 2 decades, and I watch this same mistake every single fall. Gardeners leave stems standing because cutting back something still green feels wasteful to them. Others have read somewhere that pollinators need the hollow stems left in place through winter. Both instincts are reasonable on paper, but they collide head-on with what's actually hiding in these stems. Most of the time, that patience with your garden is perfectly fine and even beneficial to wildlife. With these 7 plants specifically, that same patience becomes a costly and avoidable mistake. Garden centers have already swapped their shelves over to mums and pumpkins for the season. Nobody on staff there is walking you through what's happening inside a hollow stem right now. That conversation doesn't sell seasonal decor, so nobody in that aisle is having it with you. This video walks you through exactly which 7 perennials must come down before September 1st. You'll learn exactly what pest or disease you're racing against on each individual plant. You'll also learn exactly how deep to cut, so you're never left guessing in your own beds. Drop your hardiness zone in the comments below before you keep watching the rest of this video. 2 gardeners in different zones could be looking at very different timing on the exact same plant. Stick around, because plant number 6 is the one almost nobody prunes back in late summer. It's quietly the most expensive mistake on this entire list if you get the timing wrong. Standard advice printed on a plant tag or seed catalog insert never mentions any of this at all. That single omission is exactly what costs you by the time next June rolls around. None of this requires special equipment, just clean shears, a bag, and about 30 minutes total. Every plant on this list follows the exact same underlying pattern once you understand it. A pest or pathogen finishes its yearly cycle hidden inside foliage you were planning to leave standing. Cutting that foliage away now breaks the cycle before it ever gets the chance to restart. Think of it less as full cleanup and more as removing the launch pad for next year's problem. The window closes fast because these organisms are actively settling in as we speak. Every day you wait past September 1st is another day these pests have to dig in deeper. Plant 1 on this list is the peony, botanically known to gardeners as paeoniae in Latin. If you grow peonies, you already know they're among the longest-lived plants in American gardens. A well-sited peony can genuinely outlive the very gardener who first planted it in the ground. Varieties like Sarah Bernhardt in soft double pink are garden fixtures for very good reason. Festiva maxima brings white blooms flecked with crimson to beds across the entire country. The deep red Carl Rosenfield and the buttery yellow Ido hybrid Barzella round out the classics. Every single one of them is currently harboring the early stages of a fungal disease you can't see yet. Most gardeners never think about this disease until the moment it's already fully established. Botrytis blight, caused primarily by the fungus Botrytis paeoniae, produces spores all summer on infected leaves. As those leaves die back naturally in late summer, the fungus quietly shifts into full survival mode. It forms hard, dark resting structures called sclerotia right at the base of the old stems. Those sclerotia also form in the surrounding soil, built specifically to survive winter's cold. Come spring, right as your new red peony shoots push through the soil, spores release directly onto them. The following year brings blackened stem bases and flower buds that turn brown before ever opening. Gardeners usually blame that decline on weather, rather than a fungus that overwintered in the crown. It's an easy mistake to make, since nothing about the symptoms screams fungus at first glance. Cut peony foliage completely to the ground, within an inch or 2 of the soil line, using clean shears. Remove every single piece of stem and leaf material from the bed once you've made the cut. Do this before the stems collapse on their own, since collapsed foliage against the crown invites sclerotia, a mature, disease-suppressed peony clump that's bloomed reliably for a decade can carry $50 in replacement value. That $50 risk sits up against roughly 10 minutes of cutting and bagging debris. Zones 3 through 8 cover the vast majority of peony cultivation across the United States. This timing applies whether you're gardening up in Minnesota or all the way south in Virginia. The math here is simple. 10 minutes now versus $50 and years of lost blooms later. Skip this cut, and Botrytis doesn't just linger, it actively multiplies in the crown all winter. There's no fungicide spray in spring that undoes sclerotia already sitting inside the crown tissue. Prevention in September is the only real intervention point you have with this particular disease. Peonies reward this small effort with decades of reliable blooms if you keep doing it every fall. Skip 1 year, and you're not starting over. You're just fighting a slightly bigger fungal foothold. Plant 2 on this list is the daylily, botanically known to gardeners as hemerocalis. Daylilies are about as forgiving as perennials get, which is exactly why this problem sneaks past people. Stella de Oro, the compact re-blooming gold variety, sits in more American yards than almost any other perennial. Hyperion, Catherine Woodbury, and Happy Returns are all just as susceptible to the same fungal issue. That issue is called daylily leaf streak, caused by the fungus Aureobasidium microstictum. Through summer, it shows up as a reddish-brown streak running down the center of older leaves. It's easy to dismiss that streak as normal late-season fading if you don't know what to look for. What isn't normal is exactly where that fungus travels to next in the plant's life cycle. As foliage dies back, Aureobasidium overwinters directly in the dead leaf debris around the crown. In wet springs, it reinfects the fresh fan of new leaves within weeks of their emergence. That reinfection can be severe enough to stunt the entire clump before it ever sends up a bloomscape. Cut the foliage back to about 3 inches above the crown using clean, sharp tools. Strip away any dead or streaked leaf litter tucked into the base of the plant as well. Clear all of that material completely out of the bed rather than leaving it nearby to reinfect. This whole task takes roughly 15 minutes per established clump of daylilies in your beds. It costs nothing compared to a fungicide rotation running $20 to $30 a season. That fungicide rotation also has to be reapplied after every single heavy rain event. Daylilies stay reliable from Zone 3 through Zone 9 across most of the country. Just shift the timing a few weeks earlier or later, depending on your local first frost date. A 15-minute cleanup beats a season-long spray schedule every single time you run the numbers. Once the debris is cleared, next spring's new fans emerge into clean soil instead of active spores. That clean start is the entire difference between a thriving clump and a stunted one come June. Daylilies are tough plants, but tough doesn't mean immune to a fungus overwintering at their base. Toughness just means the plant survives the infection, not that it grows the way it should. A clump held back by leaf streak every spring never gets to show what it's actually capable of. Plant 3 on this list is the Hosta, the anchor of more shade gardens than any other perennial. Cultivars like Francis Williams, Patriot, Sum and Substance, and Blue Angel are practically default choices. Their broad, overlapping leaves create dense, moist shelter right at the crown of the plant. By late August, that shelter is exactly what slugs and snails are using to lay their eggs. A single slug can deposit dozens of eggs directly into the damp leaf litter against a Hosta crown. Those eggs overwinter there, insulated from frost by the mat of collapsing foliage above them. Come spring, they hatch in far greater numbers than the population you fought all last summer. By June, you're back to picking ragged, hole-riddled leaves off your very best Hosta clumps. Once foliage begins to yellow and flop in late August, cut it back all the way to the crown. Rake out the old mulch and leaf litter underneath the plant once that foliage is removed. Replace that old mulch with a fresh, thin layer, instead of leaving the ground bare. You're physically removing the incubator here, not simply tidying up the appearance of the bed. Iron phosphate slug bait runs $8 to $15 a bag and needs frequent reapplication. This cleanup instead costs you a single bag of fresh mulch and about 20 minutes of your time. Hosta stays hardy from Zone 3 through Zone 9, thriving especially in shaded northern beds. The cool, damp conditions hostas love are the exact same conditions slugs thrive in too. If slug damage on a mature hosta clump seems to worsen every year despite spring baiting, this is why. You're treating the adult slugs that already survived winter, while the next generation waits underneath. Breaking that cycle once in late August saves you a full season of bait purchases next year. Fresh mulch also looks better going into fall than the matted slug-chewed layer it replaces. This is one of the few cutbacks that pays off in appearance and pest control at the same time. Hostas planted in heavy shade benefit from this cleanup most, since that's where slugs concentrate. Beds near mulched pathways or damp foundations tend to see the heaviest slug pressure of all. Plant 4 on this list is black-eyed Susan, botanically known to gardeners as Rudbeckia. Goldsturm remains the most widely planted Rudbeckia cultivar in America by a wide margin. Prairie Sun, Cherry Brandy, and the compact Little Gold Star share the same seasonal vulnerability. Nearly every stand of black-eyed Susans develops the same problem by late summer each year. Septoria leaf spot, caused by the fungus Septoria rudbeckiae, starts as small dark spots on old leaves. It works its way steadily upward through the plant as the growing season continues. By late August, a heavily affected clump can be nearly bare from the knees down. All of that infected foliage ends up lying in a ring of debris right at the base of the plant. That debris is exactly where the fungus spends the winter months waiting to strike again. It produces fruiting structures there that release spores onto fresh basal growth come spring. That's why the same plants tend to get worse, not better, year after year without any intervention. Cut the stems down to 2 or 3 inches above the soil line using clean shears. Gather every fallen leaf from around the crown, not just the standing stems themselves. Get all of that material completely out of the bed once you've gathered it all up. Rudbeckia responds to this hard cutback with vigorous new basal growth within just a few weeks. That new growth typically arrives well ahead of frost across most growing zones in the country. A fungicide program to manage recurring septoria runs $15 to $25 per application. That program also needs several rounds a season just to keep pace with reinfection. This sanitation step, by contrast, is completely free and only needs doing once each year. Rudbeckia stays reliable from Zone 3 through Zone 9 across most of the country. One late summer cutback here replaces an entire season of chasing spots with a spray bottle. Rudbeckia is forgiving enough that a hard cutback this late won't hurt next year's flowering at all. The plant is simply redirecting its energy into roots and crown once the foliage is gone. Expect a flush of fresh basal leaves within weeks, well before the ground freezes for winter. That fresh growth heads into winter clean, instead of carrying spores forward into spring. A clean start each fall is what keeps a Rudbeckia patch looking good year after year. Plant 5 on this list is the garden mum, botanically known to gardeners as chrysanthemum. Hardy garden mums, including old dependable varieties like Sheffield Pink, hide a quiet nematode problem. The Igloo series and the Korean mum Clara Curtis share this same troubled reputation. Almost nobody realizes the trouble because the damage looks like ordinary leaf browning at first glance. Foliar nematodes, specifically Aphelencoides rhizomabosi, are microscopic worms living inside leaf tissue. They move through the plant in the thin film of water that sits on wet foliage after rain. The damage they cause is genuinely unmistakable once you actually know what to look for. Wedge-shaped brown patches, sharply bounded by the leaf veins, start on the lowest leaves first. That damage works its way upward through the plant as the infection spreads over time. As infected leaves collapse into the crown in late summer, the nematodes travel downward with them. They overwinter directly in the crown tissue and the surrounding leaf debris around it. Come spring, they're ready to swim back up into new growth once conditions turn wet enough. There's no consumer-available chemical treatment that reliably eliminates established foliar nematodes. That gap is exactly what makes sanitation the only real lever a home gardener actually has here. Cut infected mums back hard to 2 or 3 inches, removing every scrap of fallen leaf debris. Avoid overhead watering on the fresh regrowth once you've finished the cutback entirely. A commercial-grade nematicide isn't something a home gardener can legally buy or apply in most states. This cutback isn't the cheap option in this particular case. It's functionally the only option. Hardy garden mums perform reliably in zones 5 through 9 across most regions of the country. Certain Korean types push that hardiness range further, into zone 4 in some gardens. Gardeners who've written mums off as short-lived are often dealing with an uninterrupted nematode population. The plant was never doomed from the start. The infection cycle simply never got broken. One thorough cutback now can be the difference between mums that fade and mums that thrive for years. Because there's no chemical fix available to home gardeners, this sanitation step carries extra weight. Skipping it even 1 year can let a nematode population rebuild itself within a single season. Watering at the base instead of overhead also helps keep new growth from becoming reinfected. A soaker hose or drip line at the base does the job without wetting the foliage at all. It's a small change to your watering routine that pays off well past this one problem. Plant 6 on this list is catmint, botanically known to gardeners as nepeta, worth the wait. The damage from this particular pest is easy to miss until the following June arrives. Walker's Low, the variety that made catmint a garden staple after winning Perennial Plant of the Year, is at risk. Six Hills Giant and Cat's Meow share that same woody, upright stem structure with Walker's Low. That structure is exactly what a particular insect finds irresistible late in the summer. The four-lined plant bug, Poecilocapsis lineatus, spends its adult stage in August doing something quiet. The female inserts her eggs directly into slits she cuts into soft, pithy stem tissue. Catmint happens to be one of her preferred hosts of choice for laying those eggs. Those eggs stay embedded inside the stem through the entire winter season ahead. They're sheltered from cold. Inside living plant tissue for the whole time they wait there. They hatch the following spring, right as new catmint growth begins to emerge from the ground. The resulting nymphs immediately begin feeding, leaving sunken, dark, almost burned-looking spots on leaves. Gardeners typically blame that damage on a fungus, since visually it looks exactly like one. There's no fungicide that touches this problem, because it was never actually a fungus at all. Cutting the entire plant back to a low woody framework of 4 to 6 inches removes those eggs. Do this before September 1st, ahead of most of the season's egg-laying activity in the beds. Dispose of the trimmed stems in the trash rather than tossing them onto the compost pile. That single choice takes those overwintering eggs completely out of your garden for good. This one cut prevents an entire spring generation of feeding damage on your catmint plants. The cost is just a few minutes of work with a pair of ordinary pruning shears in hand. Nepeta stays hardy in zones 3 through 8 across most regions of the country. Skip this cut, and you'll spend next June wondering why your catmint suddenly looks scorched. Most gardeners never connect that scorched look back to eggs laid inside the stems the previous August. By the time nymphs are feeding, there's nothing left to spray that actually reaches the damage. Catmint bounces back quickly from this cut, often filling back in before frost even arrives. You're not sacrificing this fall's look for next spring's health, you get both if you time it right. Plant 7 on this list is garden aster, botanically known to gardeners as Symphyotrichum. Fall asters like Purple Dome, October Skies, and Alma Pochka are supposed to close out the season in color. By late August, most established clumps already show a white powdery coating across their lower foliage. That's happening right as the plant should be gearing up for its very best display of the year. Powdery mildew here is caused by several closely related fungi in the genus Ericifae and Podosphaera. It behaves the same way it does on many other late-season perennials throughout the garden. As daylight hours shorten, the fungus stops spreading across existing leaves and shifts its strategy. It starts producing tough overwintering fruiting bodies called Cleistothecia instead of new spores. Those structures drop into the soil and crown debris, fully protected from the coming frost. New spring growth pushes directly up into that waiting spore bank the moment it emerges. The mildew cycle restarts before the plant has even had a real chance to establish itself. On top of that, dense aster clumps commonly host lace bugs overwintering in the exact same crown litter. Thin out badly mildewed stems now, and cut the most heavily infected growth back to 6 or 8 inches. Clear fallen leaf debris out from under the clump so both problems lose their winter shelter. Asters treated this way in late August still have time to push a fresh, largely mildew-free flush of foliage. They can still bloom before frost arrives if you get this cutback done in time this year. New England asters and their popular cultivars stay hardy from zone 3 through 8. A single August pass through your asters buys back the fall display the mildew was about to steal. Skip the cutback and the mildew simply reappears earlier and heavier the following August. Lacebugs left undisturbed in that same litter add a second wave of damage on top of the fungus. Asters are often the last colour in the garden, so protecting that fall display is worth the effort. Losing that final flush of colour to mildew is a disappointing way to end the growing season. Before wrapping up, there are 3 mistakes that quietly undo everything covered so far in this video. I see gardeners make all 3 of these mistakes every single fall without fail, year after year. First, disinfect your pruning shears between every single plant you work on in the garden. If you cut mildew-coated aster stems and move straight to catmint with the same blades, you're spreading spores. You're physically transferring pathogens onto a fresh wound on a completely different plant. Keep a small spray bottle of 70% isopropyl alcohol in your pocket while you work. Give the blades a quick spray between each plant as you move steadily through the garden. It takes about 10 seconds and is the difference between solving a problem and relocating it. Second, none of this cut debris belongs anywhere near your compost pile this fall. Home compost, even an actively managed one, rarely holds the internal temperature needed to kill spores. Sclerotia and overwintering eggs survive most home compost systems without any trouble at all. Every infected clipping tossed in there eventually gets spread back across your garden as finished compost. Bag that debris instead and put it straight into the trash where it actually belongs. Third, this needs to become an annual habit tied to a specific date on your calendar every year. Set a recurring reminder for August 15th every single year going forward from now on. The biology behind every one of these 7 problems runs on a calendar that doesn't care about your schedule. Skip one of these 3 habits, and you can undo the cutback work you just spent an afternoon doing. These 3 habits take minutes each, but they're what separates a permanent fix from a temporary one. A dirty blade or a compost pile full of debris quietly cancels out every cut you just made. Treat these 3 habits as part of the job, not as optional extras tacked onto the end. Do all 3 every time, and the 7 cuts above actually deliver on what they promise. Let's run back through the entire list one more time before you head outside to your garden. Peony gets cut to the ground to strip out Botrytis sclerotia before they can form in the crown. Daylily gets cut to 3 inches to remove the leaf streak fungus overwintering in dead foliage. Hosta gets cut back with the old mulch cleared away to eliminate slug and snail egg sites. Black-eyed Susan gets cut to 2 or 3 inches to break the septoria leaf spot cycle for good. Garden Mum gets cut back hard with all debris removed, since sanitation is the only real defense. Catmint gets cut to a low woody framework to remove 4-lined plant bug eggs before winter sets in. Garden Aster gets thinned and cut back to strip out both mildew cleistothecia and sheltering lacebugs. 7 plants, roughly half an hour of total work across your entire garden this weekend. In exchange, you head into spring without the pest and disease pressure that would otherwise be waiting. That's a fair trade for anyone who's tired of fighting the same problems every single year. None of these 7 cuts require special tools, just clean shears and a bag for the debris. Mark August 15th on next year's calendar right now, so this doesn't sneak up on you again. Write it down somewhere you'll actually see it, not just a mental note that fades by October. Future you, standing in the garden next June, will be glad present you didn't skip this. A single afternoon in the garden this week can save you an entire season of problems next spring. Tell me your hardiness zone in the comment section down below right now before you go. Let me know which of these 7 is sitting in your yard right now without this treatment yet. If this saved you a headache you didn't know was coming, send it to a fellow gardener who needs it. September 1st is coming fast, so go grab your shears and get started in your garden today.